Shankar, who is a renowned cancer surgeon at Sucheta Kriplani Hospital, Delhi. So we welcome both of you, sir. And we will start by requesting Dr. Day to speak about his experiences and his own experiences with mental health. So, sir, please take the floor. It is all yours. Vikram, sir, if you will just unmute yourself.
Can you now hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, sir.
Right. So, thank you very much for inviting me to deliver this small talk. It's always a pleasure.
Vicky.
Yes.
Stay still. Otherwise, the screen goes swoosh, swoosh.
Okay.
Stay still.
Okay, fine.
Hold on to the frame. Hi, Tuli. Yes. Sejal, please start recording. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't move. Huh.
Okay, fine.
Lisa ma'am has just joined us. So, hi, Lisa ma'am.
Hi.
Hi. So, I have had said that I would be lecturing on the social determinants of depression. I didn't take up psychological and social determinants of depression because I have very little knowledge of medicine. Since I'm not a doctor and I have really never studied psychology, I chose to keep psychology out of this lecture. But social determinants is very much part of history, and being a history student, I wouldn't really call myself a historian. I teach legal history at the National University of Juridical Sciences. I wanted to detail out some of the factors that are responsible, in my opinion, for the eventual creation of depression in people in India. I can't say I'm talking about people in the West because I have very little knowledge of their personal experiences. I spent only 4.5 years in England, and that ended in 2003. So middle of 2003. So it's been 16 to 17 years since I returned to India, and I have very little knowledge of social factors that can be responsible for the creation of depression in those countries. I do have some knowledge of India, and that's what I would be talking about. Now, to begin with, I personally believe that one major reason for the creation of depression in India in the age group between, I would say, 15 and 55 is the prevalence of competition. Competition is and continues to be one of the principal factors for what I would say the creation of a sense of urgency in the minds of the large majority of students in India. And after that, young professionals, young junior faculty members, junior officials in companies and government services. It is this competition which really leads to a sense of urgency, which eventually leads to depression. Competition can be both healthy and unhealthy competition. When I joined the NUJ as a minister in Calcutta of the Left Front, came to the NUJ, the law minister, who was instrumental in setting up this university under the stewardship of Jyoti Basu, came to this university and said that we live in the age of competition and that we must be able to cope with this age, with the dynamics and ground realities of this age. That, I think, is the main reason why senior students of colleges and universities and young professionals tend to feel that sense of urgency. When they fail to perform up to the level that they themselves set for their age group, they start getting depressed. That is my first and my principal point here. So, what are the factors then responsible for the creation of an unhealthy competitive society? What leads to a situation in which we have unhealthy competition? I'll quickly go through this because I really don't have much time for a lengthy talk. In my opinion, once again, I believe there are 4 factors that are responsible for unhealthy competition in Indian society. Number 1 is social pressure. Number 2 is cultural misconceptions. Number 3 is professional maladjustments. And number 4, insensitivities of the university and office administrations. These 4 factors contribute to the creation of what I call unhealthy competition, which needs to be dealt with. I'll quickly go through these 4 factors because there are other speakers. Dr. Shankar is there. So, social pressure, the first factor that leads to unhealthy competition. There again are 2 sub-factors in this. These are, number 1, family pressure, and number 2, peer pressure. Family pressure has 2 determinants: overbearing relatives and over-determinism, as I would call. I have borrowed this word over-determinism from my father. He used to tell me about the ill effects of over-determinism. In a Darwinistic society, in a society which gives a lot of importance to survival of the fittest, over-determinism has a role to play, important role to play. So, overbearing relatives, overbearing family members, very close relatives, and over-determinism of, for instance, parents can lead to what I seek to call family pressure, which leads to a considerable amount of unhappiness in the minds of the young adults, young senior students and young professionals. And when I talk about over-determinism or overbearing relatives, including parents and grandparents, I really am referring to bullying. There is this serious problem of bullying in families. I think that needs to be dealt with. I don't think doctors would like to take this up. They have the work of diagnosing an illness and curing it. But
Bikram, can I intervene?
Yes, please do.
Bikram, we generally intersperse our conversations with personal experiences, and you have faced a lot of bullying. So we would be very grateful if you share that too.
Precisely, I'm coming to bullying. I'm going to do precisely that. Thank you. So bullying. So bullying, and here I think I am personally a victim of bullying. I have been through a school which was a new school. It was started 3 years before I was born. I was born in 1968 and the school was started in 1965. My father went to St. Xavier's Collegiate School, but he had very strong nationalistic Marxist views, so he put my sister and me, both of us, into this school called Padma Bhavan, which is named after the school that Rabindranath Tagore founded in Shantiniketan. And it was founded by members of the Tagore family as well. So I unfortunately was a victim of very considerable amount of social bullying in school, which reflected on my family's responses to me. And unfortunately, I must say here that I was not spared of bullying inside the home as well. I was born with a tumor in my stomach, and I was very ill till I was 5 to 10 years old. And I think I was always a bit of a weakling at home. So I don't want to really point fingers at my parents or my sister. That would not be the nicest thing to do here. I would say I was a victim of bullying at home by friends, by friends in school, peer pressure. That's where peer pressure comes in as well, which gets mixed with family pressure as well. So it is this bullying, unfortunately, that eventually leads to depression. Bullying could be of various types: verbal abuse, physical abuse, thrashings, physical thrashings. And here I would like to share my personal experiences in England. My father, a historian, took us to Oxford in 1977, 2 years after my grandfather passed away in 1975. And we were there for 5 to 6 months in the winter of 77, and we had to be put into a school there. So obviously he didn't have the money to put us into a private school. He put us into a state school, a free school, called Summertown Middle School. And I was a victim of racist bullying, very considerable amount of racism. There was this tree with black fruits, possibly berries. The English boys, mostly from the working classes, would pick the fruits and start throwing them at me. Then there was this one instance in which I was dragged. I was always very thin and short of stature as a child. I'm now 5'4", 9'9", and whatever. So I was dragged. I still very clearly remember. I was dragged into the toilet one day by a hulk of a guy, 3 or 4 years senior to me, and beaten up very badly. So I came out and I complained to the class teacher, a thin, tall Englishman. He immediately caught hold of this boy and took him into the same cubicle and gave him a shaking next to the commode. So it is this bullying which was probably responsible both at home and in school, that was responsible for my depression. I was diagnosed formally with depression, anxiety depression in 1997, 1 year before I went to England. But that was the climax, I would say. I have been depressed since childhood, which was one reason why I could not concentrate properly on my studies. I could not, I've read that in various pieces, that not only is the gut connected to the brain, depression leads to the loss of concentration, which can lead to underperformance in one's school and college studies. So that's the first factor that is responsible for what I may call depression, the creation of depression. Second, cultural misconception that are responsible in particular about the West, that are in particular responsible for the creation of depression. From a very young age, and everybody here would appreciate what I'm going to say, we are told by our grandparents, by our parents, by our friends, their parents, by our teachers, that we must go to England or we must go to America. In my generation, which is your generation, we were told that going to America is the in thing. Earning in my maternal grandfather used to lie down on the bed and tell me, you don't want to earn in dollars. So I remember I would tell him that my father meaning my Baba has taught me not to crave after any dollars. So I'm not interested in dollars. So this craving for the West, this craving for the good things of life in the West, a good bottle of red wine or a good bottle of white wine, the lovely drives that one gets in the Western countries, is, I think, responsible to some extent for the creation of expectations in our minds that eventually leads to a sense of failure when we can't go there, when we can't go to the West. the 90% of the people who are told to go to the West don't go there, fail to go there. Or even if they go there, they come back after 3 to 4 years and then don't go back. I haven't been back to the West except 2 or 3 times. I went on the Fulbright in 2013. That was all, 1.5 months. 1 month, 8 days after my father died of a brain tumor and renal failure. So that, I think, is responsible for the creation of depression. You told me to link these factors to my personal experiences. I think my depression is to some extent related to this failure of the bulk of the Indian people to eventually migrate to the West. We must not continually want to migrate to the West. I wanted to go to England, I did go to England. I wanted to go and do a degree in England, I did do a degree in England. I got my DPhil at Oxford. But I never wanted to migrate to England or to America. I always wanted to come back to India, and till today, I have no desire of migrating. I want to earn in rupees, I want to pay my taxes in India. I have my PAN card number. It is this craving for the West, which is, I think, responsible for the creation of depression, which arises from a failure to travel to the West. That's number 2. Number 3, professional maladjustments. And here I'm talking about the serious problem, and this I feel very seriously and sincerely, very serious problem of the overbearing meritocracy that is emerging in the new democracies of the world. And I seriously believe in this. My students have laughed at me. My parents used to laugh at me. My father stopped laughing at me because he realized that I seriously believe in this. It is this meritocracy which is responsible, this overbearing meritocracy, which is responsible for the creation of a sense of failure in all of us. When we realize that we cannot compare ourselves with our peers who are perhaps much better than us academically, a sense of failure sets into us. We must realize that everybody isn't born with a golden brain. Everybody cannot be an Amartya Sen. I wrote a chapter in my thesis which was on the Bengal famine. In 2010, Amartya Sen rang my father to tell him that he wanted to meet me to see my chapter. So I took the article that I published in the Studies in History journal, and he looked at it, gave it a very cute smile, and that was that. I don't think he thought very highly of my article. It was over-factual, it was pretty stolid. It wasn't simply in the same league as anything that Amartya Sen writes. So it is this widening gap between the rich and the poor of the academic profession. I would call Amartya Sen the rich, and others, I'm not calling myself poor, but others poor in the academic profession. It is this widening gap between the entitled and the not so entitled ones in the academic professions that creates a sense of failure in the minds of the large majority of people who fail to live up to the expectations of meritocracy that Alexis de Tocqueville talks about in his books, where he talks about the growing democracies of the world, especially the one in America. So I think that itself has to be addressed by social scientists, psychologists, even doctors, to understand where the meritocracy is failing. If the meritocracy is going to start behaving like the aristocracy, then what is the difference between the meritocracy, between this meritocracy and the old aristocracy? What was so wrong in the old aristocracy then? We can go back to our old rulers, our natural leaders. They weren't any more oppressive than our new meritocrats, our politicians, our bureaucrats, our university chair professors, such as Amartya Sen and Manmohan Singh. how much more oppressive were the zamindars and the rajas and maharajas than these people. This widening gap between the entitled and the less entitled ones in the new meritocracy is, I think, responsible for the creation of a sense of failure, which leads to depression. And finally, insensitivities of the various offices and administrations. And others here would be able to tell me about what the offices do, companies and government offices do. I have very little knowledge of that. But I don't know how the hospital administrations behave with their doctors. Although I have heard they don't behave at all well. But I can talk about the law schools, certainly. There is this tremendous insensitivity in the NLU administrations, and Parikshit ji, who teaches in the Campus Law Center, should know all about the NLUs as well as I do. So, for instance, here let's take the issue of gender. There was a time when in the NUJS, maternity leave would just not be granted. And this is a serious problem. Now I think the university administration is now beginning to wake up to the reality of giving maternity leave at least, or even paternity leave. Why should women only have to take maternity leave? Why can't fathers take paternity leave as well? So it is this insensitivity of university administrations, or for that matter, when the vice chancellor or the registrar realizes that a faculty member is deeply depressed. Why can't the university administration address this issue? Why can't the university administration have a regular psychologist or a psychiatrist who would be sympathetic to the personal problems of the faculty members, staff members, students, etc.? I'm not talking of the faculty alone, I'm not talking of myself alone. I'm talking of staff members even, the fourth class staff members as well. They are continually cribbing, they are continually crying. Then I'm talking about, see, the canteen boys. These boys, there was this very short-statured, emaciated little boy who would come every day with a cup of coffee or a tea for me, at least twice a day or thrice a day. He was, 12 or 13 years old, or 15 or 16? He was being denied of education, guaranteed under Article 45 of the Indian Constitution. Free primary compulsory education for all children under the age of 14. He was being denied this constitutional right. The administration, the university administration must address these issues to redress some wrongs and reduce a sense of failure in the minds of the large majority of employees in these universities, at least in the NLUs. I'm not pointing my fingers at anybody. My vice chancellors have been exceptionally efficient, so I'm not commenting on them. So these are the four factors that are responsible for the creation of a sense of failure that eventually leads to depression. So in conclusion, and I'll stop here for the day, I have been brought up by by a group of intellectuals, led of course by my father, in my case, who have taught me to share. When I was beginning to do my research in history, Indian history, my father told me to go every day to the National Archives to flick through the papers, government papers, and come back and share the data that I was personally gathering with my friends, which is what he used to do with, say, Bipin Chandra or even Irfan Habib. Irfan Habib used to do that with his friends. So it is that culture of sharing which creates a culture of healthy competition. They were all competing with each other. All these people were competing with each other. But their competition was not an unhealthy competition. It was a very healthy competition in which they wanted each other to perform well, to succeed in life, to get nice jobs. But at the same time, they were very conscious of their own well-being, their own career developments. So it is this culture of sharing which I think is completely missing in today's academic profession. I am not talking of the IAS, the IFS, or the IPS because I have no knowledge of the inner dynamics of these services. I'm not talking of the companies like the one that Tulika works in because I have no knowledge of that place as well. I can only talk of the NLUs and Delhi University to some extent, JNU, etc., Goa. So it is that culture of sharing which is completely missing in the academic profession, which creates, in my opinion, unhealthy competition. And it is this unhealthy competition which is responsible for the creation of a sense of failure, which eventually leads to anxiety and depression. Physical abuse, verbal abuse, all that comes in, bullying, ragging. I was never ragged in college and university. I had a pretty good time in Presidency College and JNU. I hardly ever faced any ragging there. I had a very bad time in school. For various reasons, maybe I was personally responsible for my own misfortunes. I'm not going to point fingers at anybody, teachers or students. So, but all that I would leave out, really speaking, and point to the creation of the need for the creation of a culture in which we can compete with each other in a healthy atmosphere, not in an unhealthy atmosphere. And finally, I would like to end today's lecture with a few words of thanks to all my friends, newly made friends in the Proud Depressive group, and for listening to me so patiently. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Day. Sir, in the course of his talk, has very clearly brought about the social aspects, or what are the social factors which contribute towards, a state of mind which we called depression. And he has also been very frank and honest about, his own childhood struggles. See, because what they say in mental health, again, qualifying it with the phrase that I am no doctor, but from what one has experienced, from what one has read, from what one has seen, every one of these problems has its genesis in childhood. And so this instance which he has talked about, I think, touches a chord. And again, a very valid point which I can relate to is in academic institutions, especially like the one that he works in, there is a gender dynamic to this problem. There is bullying aspect to it, people who are thin, people who are, non-conforming, people who may be dark, people who may be not fair. And, by not fair, I don't mean unfair. I mean not fair, dark-skinned, because we in India want everybody to be fair and lovely. So now, ये सारी problems कुछ होती हैं that, so, and जाने अनजाने में जब हम इस तरह के लोगों के नाम रख देते हैं, ये छोटू चाय लाना, why don't you say Lambu? You always say Chotu, right? You always say, Patle idara, Sukde idara. So those kind of things, even though you may not be doing anything physically, you are creating an impact and injury on the psyche of the individual. So I think that's very, very unfair. And thank you very much, sir, for bringing this out. Another point which he has brought out is the fact that the peer pressure leading to depression. I think this is something which I wholeheartedly endorse. Everybody wants कि उसके कितने नंबर आ रहे हैं उससे मतलब नहीं है. वो 3 Idiots में भी यही दिखाया है ना, दैट दोस्त अगर पास हो जाता है तो अच्छा लगता है, दोस्त फेल हो जाता है तो बुरा लगता है, लेकिन दोस्त के अगर ज्यादा नंबर आते हैं तो बुरा लगता है. क्यों भाई? Why do you want to compare yourself with the other? And this is where we as parents also are at fault. We are always concerned with what the other person has got. You are not concerned with what you have got or what you have scored. Again, relating this to life, we are in India, we often find everybody को अपने काम से ज्यादा दूसरे के काम में मजा आता है. IAS ऑफिसर बोलते हैं टीचर क्या पढ़ा रहे हैं, कुछ नहीं पढ़ा रहे. टीचर बोलते हैं देखो जर्नलिस्ट कैसे हैं, जर्नलिस्ट बोलता है देखो नेता कैसे हैं, नेता बोलता है देखो IAS ऑफिसर कैसे हैं. अरे भाई अपना काम ठीक करो, बाकी चीजें अपने आप they will fall into force. Now these things of wanting to compare yourself with the other, शर्मा जी के लड़के के इतने नंबर आए तुम्हारे इतने क्यों आए, these things also cause problems. These things also cause. So day before yesterday I was watching this movie called Chalang, and this is a very, very interesting kind of a concept, wherein the moral of the whole thing is that you take a team which is weak and make them win. So that is the whole challenge before us as teachers, and Dr. Day being one, and I being one. So 90 लाने वाले को 100 तो कोई भी पहुंचा सकता है, 10 नंबर लाने वाले को 40 तक पहुंचाना, standing with the person who is the perceived weakling, that is what is important. And that is what I personally really liked about Dr. Day's talk. Thank you very much, sir. Very, very well researched and very, very, जिसे कहते हैं ना, दिल से बोला हुआ lecture. Thank you, sir. I now would want to introduce our second speaker for the day, Dr. Abhishek Shankar, and Dr. Shankar is going to speak to us about the mental health and cancer. Now, why is this important? Because cancer as a disease is something which is, a person tends to lose hope rather soon, or it is something which we have not been able to find a cure to. And so this will be a very interesting talk. And Dr. Shankar is an assistant professor, like I told you, at the Department of Radiation Oncology at Lady Hardinge Medical College and Srimati Sucheta Kriplani Hospitals, Delhi. And prior to this, he has also served in the Department of Oncology at AIIMS, New Delhi. And so cancer is a separate ball game altogether, a separate disease altogether, something which mankind has not been able to, if I may, put its finger on so far. So with these words, sir, I would like to invite you and hear from you regarding mental health aspects in treatment of cancer. Over to you, sir. Dr. Shankar, if you will just unmute yourself, please. You're on mute, sir. Dr. Abhishek Shankar? I wonder if he's able to hear me. Sir, if you will just unmute yourself, Dr. Abhishek Shankar.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah,
I was trying to do that.
Yeah, please.
Let me share my screen.
Please.
Can you everybody see that screen? Can you see the screen?
Go to present now.
Yeah, can you see that?
No, we are not seeing. Yeah, now we can.
Yes, we are now seeing it.
Yeah, now we are seeing your screen, sir.
Yes. First of all, first thing that you have mentioned that cancer is not a curable disease, and you were hesitating to, call it as a curable disease. I would like to tell you, cancer is a curable disease. Cancer per se has, many subtypes, like started from brain tumor to the tumor of the kidney, breast cancer. So it depends on the stage and type of cancers and in which stage you are presenting to hospital, that decided what is the chances of cure. So today, cancer is a curable disease, starting from 100% in stage 1 to the 10% to 20% in stage 4. So it's a curable disease, and everybody should understand this, because this is, I work more on the cancer prevention. So this, is a challenge for me, that still the people who are living in Delhi and working for the society is not aware how, what is the survival for cancer. So we have to work hard to make people aware. So right now, big congratulations to Proud Depressive Group. You people are doing great work, and we can witness this, through your Facebook post, and you people have really reaching to large number of people and making them aware, and lot many people are now associating themselves and now coming for association. As I can see in the post on the WhatsApp, that many people are asking for help in terms of psychologists, psychiatrists. So this is a success story. So I will be talking about cancer and mental health issues, which is very important, very, very important. As mental health problems are preventable, but it is often ignored in our day-to-day life, because we all know that every cancer specialist main focus is just to treat patient. What happens to patient after that, nobody is really bothered. So I have no conflict of interest as far as this presentation is concerned. So how important it is, and why we are talking about mental health. It is estimated that up to 1/3 of the people treated for cancer in hospital have a common mental health condition. Rates of major depressive disorders are thought to be the 3 times higher than the general population. So anywhere from 8 to 24% of the people with cancer are also living with depression. Young adults are at increased risk of depression and other conditions if you compare with the middle-aged people or the people in the older age with cancer. So we have talked enough, but there are so many discussions about how cancer patient has so many mental illness, but this is also important to know how the people with the mental illnesses are more prone to develop cancer. And this is a paper by David Lawrence which described that yes, people who are having mental illnesses, they are more prone to develop cancer and they are dying more often because of cancer. What the reason they have cited that yes, they have the major risk factors for the cancer in terms of smoking, drug, alcohol, and obesity, which we all know is a major risk factor for different kind of cancer. So they will have more chances of developing cancer and their rate of dying is more than the normal population. So cancer and mental health is a clinical and research which is very, very important. But what we have reached right now, it has gained lots of importance as far as research is concerned. But what we see as far as the clinical practices is concerned, we have not changed yet. So this is, important study by King's College London, where Ernie and Richard Sullivan, they're the very important people who works more on the public, health perspective of the cancer research. So they took 1,463 research paper in last 10 years, and they thought, how important they are addressing the cancer research and the mental health research. They saw that yes, 80% of the paper were concerned with the effect of cancer on the mental health, rather than the reverse. Only 5% paper were, describing the cancer issues in the mental health patient, which was important to note it that breast cancer was more associated with the mental health issues, followed by the prostate cancer, lung cancer, oral cancer. The reason may be because prostate cancer and breast cancer patients are long surviving. They survive for years, so probably the long-term side effects, we can see that any long-term illnesses has important component as a mental health. So management of psychological issues in oncology is very, very difficult issue. It is the most highly prevalent, well documented, but as far as practices is concerned, we hardly bother about the mental health issues when we are treating the cancer patient. Our primary aim is to discuss the surgery point of view, the radiotherapy point of view, chemotherapy point of view, and the other treatment in terms of immunotherapy and the hormonal therapy. Because, we address this issue whenever we give a lecture. We all understand that yes, mental health is very important. It should be, addressed adequately. But in our clinical practice, probably nobody cares about this thing because we have so many patients who are in queue for their treatment. So nobody is having time to actually make them understand and refer to the right people. So assessment of spectrum of the mental disorder in cancer patients. This is analysis from the Karnataka, which they have clear-cut shown that yes, depression and anxiety are very common entity among the cancer patient. But what happened after that? nothing. It is just a research paper which has never changed anything on the ground. So we as a doctor are very happy to publish our paper, and we get very much happy after we see that yes, it is getting cited on Google Scholar, but it has never changed anything on ground because it is a difficult one. This is a resource intense thing. This is a time intense procedure. So you need to give time to the patient. You need to talk to the patient. But in our clinical practice, when you see the oncologists, how they are talking to the patient, how they are planning the treatment, you will be amazed to know that on an average, doctor is giving hardly 5 to 10 minutes to a patient. And apart from addressing the cancer care issue, you can't even imagine to even know a bit about the mental health issue, because you need to talk and you need to make patient in your confidence, to know the history. And history is one of the most important thing that you come to the diagnosis about the mental health disorders. So this is a BMC publication, and they have all, came with the same thing, that depression and anxiety among people living and with or beyond cancer. This is a clinical and the research priority. We are taking as a research questions, but still we are waiting when it will come into our clinical practice. So it is important to talk about it, even when it is very hard to discuss, because more difficult or uncomfortable to talk about mental health problem because we are not used to it. Family members or friends don't talk about mental health because they feel shy about it, and cultural beliefs in some the area don't support having mental health discussion. So start feeling strong or brave. Some people do that and they just keep it to yourself because they think that they will change everything. They believe on themselves, and it is important to understand how you're feeling mentally and physically after sharing. So if you have any of the issues in cancer patients, talk to your healthcare provider about how you are feeling emotionally, and if they understand that this is a disease, they must refer to the right person. And we can talk to any cancer patient and we can understand the problem, but what the approach a psychiatrist or psychologist having, probably we won't be having it. So be patient. Getting back to normal, it is very, very difficult because patients are relieved after cancer. Patients, they feel empowered for some time because this takes around 3 months to 1 year. They have to visit the hospital at very regular interval. So but when they are coming out of this, they start worrying about life after cancer. And the most important, because every doctor make people understand that yes, these are the cancers, this is the stage 3, stage 4, your chances of recurrence is this much. So when the patient try to get back to normal, and they always worry about the money, the economical loss, the cancer recurrence, and probably they have to be very open-minded about what is new normal for them and how it looks like. So you can do something about it. You need to talk to your healthcare team, and how do you feel physically, mentally, and emotionally during the treatment and after the treatment. You have to be very frank with them so that they can refer the right people, and talking to expert about ways you can adjust is very important, because mental health issues can worse if they are ignored and not treated adequately and on time. So role of mental health providers is very, very important. And there are various ways: mindfulness, relaxation technique, cognitive behavior therapy, meditation. Meditation is a good thing, and there are around more than 3,000 papers which talks about meditation. But probably when you go to the meditation people, many of the people, like including Baba Ramdev, they say that they can treat cancer by their own therapy, which is very annoying for us. Probably the people who have been given responsibility to do meditation and help the people to cope up with the disease, probably they start treating the disease, which is not right and which is not going to help the patient. So there are antidepressant medication and anti-anxiety medication which you should always take on the advice of the psychiatrist. So this is a paper. I will request you to go through it, which has, very beautifully, described the use of medication for treating anxiety and depression in cancer survivor. It is published in 2017 in JCO. So you must need ask for help. You have discomfort and you're not happy. You must join the social support network. If you have any problem in your relationship, intimacy, and you are concerned about body image, like many of the people are so much concerned about the body image after their surgery for the breast cancer. If you have the anxiety, depression, if you have negativity, uncertainty, and if you have anger and fear, which is very, very common for the cancer patient, because when you are diagnosed with cancer, you are agitated, you have anger, you have fear, you have uncertainty, you have anxiety. This thing is very common because, in our society, people talk cancer about this. Like you see any of the movie and the serial, when somebody has to, they had a fight with the producer and they have to be out from the, their episode, they just find that she has cancer, he has cancer, which is not good. At least you're not doing justice to 45 lakh people who are surviving with cancer at one point of time. For us, this is a beautiful disease which gives, to understand life too well, and probably it has helped us to become more human to the people and to the society. So cancer makes you learn so many things, but always giving about the negative side of it is making our work very difficult. And in India, it is always said that people can't give anything free except the advice. So our first encounter with the patient, we always say, don't listen to anybody except the people who are treating you. So COVID-19 has affected the world, and it has also affected the healthcare system. And we have always raised voice by writing that cancer care is a right and there is always an emergency. But unfortunately, in the last 9 months, cancer patients are roaming here and there, and we all know that most of the cancers here, 90% are situated in the urban area, but our people lives, 70% live in the rural area. So they're finding it difficult during the lockdown, and probably almost 1.5 million, 15 lakh people won't get a fair chance to get themselves treated and permanently cured from the disease. So if you see the statistics, there are other concerns which is killing more number of patients every year in India, but probably COVID-19 has taken the front seat, and everything has been avoided because of COVID-19. It is important, we understand it, but other things are also important, which is killing so many patients. So addressing mental health of cancer patients in times of COVID is much, much, much more important than it was during the normal days, because now patient is not getting chemotherapy, radiotherapy, and they are more concerned what will happen to their disease. Initially, it was said that you must avoid the hospital visit because you have to transmission of COVID-19. But yes, cancer doesn't wait for any disease, that they just progress 24/7. So now if we have a concern that cancer patient must visit hospital, yes, their mental counseling is an important concern nowadays. They must understand to reduce the fear and anxiety about the outcome of the disease. So these are the things to remember during the COVID time. Well, you must take teleconsultation, don't stop cancer treatment, avoid getting out, self-discipline, do yoga, don't neglect nutrition, and you should bond well with your family. So psychological problem of patient with cancer is an important concern, and we have a growing specialty in terms of psycho-oncology. Probably it is growing for last many years, but it is not in practice at most of the premier institutes in India, in the where they treat as in cancer hospitals in India. So it will take more time, but yes, it is the need of the hour right now. So unmet in 2020, if you read this kind of editorial in any journal, you will understand what is the future and how much work we have to do as far as the psycho-oncology, future of psycho-oncology in India is concerned. The take-home message will be mental health issues are very common in cancer patients and caregivers. Mental health issues are largely preventable but often ignored. Mental health awareness is an important for cancer patients, caregivers, and care providers. But probably awareness could be done by the TV channel, but probably how will they get time when they're 24/7, they're discussing about Sushant Singh Rajput and Riya Chakravarti. Probably that way you can't promote the mental awareness. And in India, the another problem is people understand that they know everything, which is called pseudo awareness. The people can have smoke 40 cigarettes a day, but they are more concerned about not having tea in the plastic cup because it causes cancer. So this is our level of awareness, and which so we
Abhishek, I want
Yes,
to
ma'am.
intervene here.
Yes, ma'am.
Please talk about 2-3 personal stories और हिंदी इंग्लिश मिक्स करके बोलो. विक्रम को तो प्रॉब्लम है, पर तुम तो बोलो हिंदी इंग्लिश मिक्स करके, और कुछ पर्सनलाइज करो. हमारा कॉन्वर्सेशन इतना ये नहीं होता है, प्रेजेंटेशन वाला नहीं होता है.
अच्छा, नहीं तो मैं तो हिंदी, मैं तो मेरा डोमिसाइल बिहार का है, मैं अंग्रेजी
हाँ, तो बिहारी टाइप बोलो.
अच्छा, तो मतलब ये है कि हमारे यहाँ जब भी आप
आजकल फ्लेवर ऑफ द सीजन है, तो बिहार तो आप हिंदी में ही बोलें तो बहुत बढ़िया रहेगा सर.
नहीं, अरे आप लोगों ने मेरा वो खराब कर दिया. मैं हिंदी में ज्यादा अच्छे से.
हाँ, तो हिंदी में बोलिए ना, बढ़िया है. मैं जी,
तो ये तो मातृभाषा है. तो वो था कि लोग फिर दिन भर फोन पे बात करते हैं, लेकिन जब उनके घर के बाहर मोबाइल टावर लगता है तब उनका कंसर्न जाग उठता है, क्योंकि बहुत गलत है. और इस तरह की जो अवेयरनेस है वो आपस में घातक है. और लोग अपने कन्वीनियंस के लिए, आप देखते हैं लोगों को कि कुछ भी कर लेंगे, लेकिन अगर क्योंकि उनको फेसबुक और व्हाट्सएप पे ये मैसेज मिला है कि अगर आप ओवन में प्लास्टिक की चीजों से गर्म करेंगे तो आपको शायद कैंसर हो सकता है, आप मेन मुद्दों को छोड़ के उन मुद्दों की तरफ अपना ध्यान जाते हैं, क्योंकि हम एक कन्वीनियंस वाली लाइफ जीना चाहते हैं. हम वही करते हैं जो हमारे लिए करना आसान है. सो मुझे लगता है कि मेरे हिसाब से जैसे पैलिएटिव केयर, जब भी कोई कैंसर पेशेंट डायग्नोस होता है, पैलिएटिव केयर तभी से चालू हो जाता है. तो मुझे लगता है कि मेंटल हेल्थ जो इश्यूज है और उसका केयर है, जब भी पेशेंट आपके पास आए कैंसर डायग्नोसिस के लिए, तभी मेंटल हेल्थ केयर स्टार्ट होना चाहिए. साइको-ऑन्कोलॉजी ग्रोइंग स्पेशलिटी है, बट रूटीनली प्रैक्टिस नहीं हो रहा है, क्योंकि ये हमारा, बिकॉज हम लोग चीजों को समझते हैं, करना चाहते हैं, और दिक्कत क्या है कि हमारी नॉलेज बहुत अच्छी होती है, हमारा एटीट्यूड बहुत अच्छा होता है. और कोई दिल्ली में रह रहा है जहां भारत के प्रधानमंत्री और राष्ट्रपति हो रहे हैं, तो दिल्ली में किसी के पास कम एटीट्यूड है ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता. बट हमारी प्रैक्टिसेस जो हैं वो बहुत खराब हैं, और ये हमें उस दिशा में ले जाती है जहां हमारे वो लोग हैं जिनको नॉलेज नहीं है और एटीट्यूड उनका नॉलेज के साथ एटीट्यूड नहीं है. तो हमें जरूरत है कि नॉलेज और एटीट्यूड के साथ साथ चीजों को प्रैक्टिस करने की और चीजों को समय के साथ बदलने की. और मेंटल हेल्थ केयर जो कैंसर पेशेंट है उस टाइम पे बहुत डिफिकल्ट है, और इसको ठीक करने की जरूरत है. ये हम लोगों ने अभी बहुत सारे ऑलमोस्ट 12-13 कंट्री के लोगों ने ये ट्राई किया है कि कैंसर केयर के साइको सोशल एस्पेक्ट्स हैं, उसको कोविड-19 पे हम लोग सही में कितना केयर करते हैं इस बारे में. और हम लोगों ने इस बारे में बहुत सारे आर्टिकल लिखे हैं, आप गूगल स्कॉलर पे जाके सर्च करके पढ़ सकते हैं, स्पेशली कैंसर केयर कोविड टाइम पे. और दिस इज द फाइनल स्टेटमेंट कि आई इन इलनेस इज आइसोलेशन एंड क्रूशियल लेटर इन वेलनेस आर वी. सो हम लोग को एक साथ काम करने की जरूरत है, बिकॉज हम लोग हेल्दी कम्युनिटीज, होप होता है, और जिनके पास होप होता है उनके पास सब चीज होती है. तो मुझे लगता है हमें एक ऑप्टिमिस्टिक तरीका अपनाना चाहिए ताकि हम डिफिकल्ट टाइम में भी अपॉर्चुनिटी तलाश कर सकें, बिकॉज पैसिमिस्ट होने का फायदा नहीं है जो हर एक अपॉर्चुनिटी को डिफिकल्टी माने. और इंडिया में मुझे लगता है कि जो मून शॉट अप्रोच है अमेरिका जो बाइडेन ने चलाया था अपने बेटे के डेथ के बाद, बिकॉज ही डाइड फ्रॉम द ग्लायोब्लास्टोमा मल्टीफॉर्मी, बट इंडिया में ग्राउंड शॉट ज्यादा जरूरी है चांद पे जाने के पहले, क्योंकि हम जो स्थिति एसी बंद कमरों में जाके देखते हैं कैंसर केयर या मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज के बारे में, वो जमीनी हालात बिल्कुल अलग होते हैं. और जब तक लोग जमीनी हालात से रूबरू नहीं होंगे, शायद हम अपने समाज में किसी भी तरह के चेंज के लिए अग्रसर नहीं होंगे. और जब आप जमीन देखेंगे तो आप वैसे भी बड़ी बात नहीं कर सकते हैं. तो जो लोग बड़ी बात करते हैं प्रोबेबली उनको जमीन दिखाने की जरूरत है. पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस से, क्योंकि इन लास्ट मंथ ओनली आई लॉस्ट माय फादर, due to cancer. So I have been him for last 2.5 years, और मुझे ये पता चलता है कि मेंटल हेल्थ इश्यूज बहुत ही बड़ा एक इम्पोर्टेंट एडिशन होना चाहिए आपके कैंसर केयर का, क्योंकि जो बातें आप केवल हम एज ए ऑन्कोलॉजिस्ट आप थेरेपी के बारे में सोचते हो, ट्रीटमेंट के बारे में सोचते हो, जो कि कैंसर डायरेक्टेड होता है. सो मुझे लगता है कि अगर आप क्योर की बात करते हो बट आप केयर की बात नहीं करते हो, आपका सारा ध्यान लाइफ को बचाने में होता है, यू नेवर बॉदर अबाउट क्वालिटी ऑफ लाइफ. तो मुझे लगता है ये जरूरी है कि आप दिन ऐड करें लाइफ में. मुझे लगता है ये भी इम्पोर्टेंट है कि हर एक दिन में आप लाइफ को भी ऐड करें. सो we must try to do work which should add life to each and every days. And last में, I am a very positive person and ma'am knows about it. So I will conclude my talk with few lines which I try to follow in my life. मैं कोशिश करता हूँ उनको follow करने की, which I've written long back. समय नहीं अब यूं ही गवाने का, यही तो मौका है कुछ कर दिखाने का. दूसरों की गैरत बहुत देखी है हमने, अब वक्त है खुद को आजमाने का. चाहे सबको लगता हो मैं छोड़ दिया हो आपने, पर आपका अपना ही तरीका हो किसी जाने का. नहीं हारना कभी भी जिंदगी में तुम हिम्मत, क्या पता ये बचा अंतिम तीर ही हो शायद निशाने का. बहुत तय कर लिया सफर हमने अंधेरों में, अब वक्त शुरू हो चुका है नई दीप जलाने का. इसलिए रख तू राह पर 2-4 ही कदम, मगर जरा तबीयत से कि मंजिल खुद ब खुद चलकर तेरे पास आएगी. हालात का रोना रोने वाले, मंजिल की तेरी तदवीर ही तेरी तकदीर बदल पाएगी. थैंक यू.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shankar. That was a very, very enlightening presentation. और जिसे कहते हैं ना, अंत भला तो सब भला. आपका अंत भी बढ़िया था और आपका शुरुआत भी बढ़िया था और आपका मिडिल भी बढ़िया था. तो और अंत में तो आपने बहुत ही बढ़िया, स्पेशली सिंस आई एम इंटरेस्टेड इन पोएट्री आपने बहुत ही बढ़िया सुनाई. एंड द की टेकअवेज व्हिच आई वुड सम अप फ्रॉम Dr. Shankar's talk is that he has very rightly pointed out that cancer need not be feared. And the other thing which he says that is, in COVID, like other medical care is suffering, cancer also is suffering. And the aspect of mental health in persons with a disease, we normally always say cancer is terminally ill. So he has tried to tell us that it is not terminally ill. And so that is quite on the brighter side, and very, very erudite presentation once again. और अब हम जो है we will open the field for questions, interjections, by any of the persons. And Archana ma'am, you'll be happy to know that today we have been keeping to the time and we have still got half an hour left for taking Q&A. So we will start first of all with taking Q&A for Dr. Day, and then by then we can come up and have Q&A for Dr. Shankar. So Dr. Day, there is a very interesting question that is coming up for you, and question kahan se aa raha hai. The question is that how does it feel to live under the shadow of a legend, a very successful person? And isi ka shayad ek corollary keh lijiye ya whatever else you may treat it as a corollary, or differently, how should a successful parent deal with a not so great child? So there are two parts of the question. How should a successful parent deal with a child who's not so successful? And on the other side, for a child who's not so successful, how does it feel to deal with the shadows of a legend? Think of somebody like a Rohan Gavaskar. Very good, but son of Sunil Gavaskar. Think of somebody like, I always thought, frankly speaking, I don't know if others will agree with me, I always thought Abhishek Bachchan was a good actor. But he is in the shadow of Amitabh Bachchan, so इसलिए अभिषेक बच्चन को कोई, हाँ, शुरू में रेफ्यूजी के टाइम he was not a great actor. But now when you see him in films, I frankly speaking, I see a lot of Hindi movies and I like Abhishek Bachchan as an actor. Right, but everybody criticizes him, makes fun of him, so I don't know how fair it. And he's not only living under the shadow of one legend, maybe two. And now he's gotten married to Aishwarya Rai also, so that is another major problem. So sir, if you will answer this, and I will pose a third question which is also a link up to this. How do men deal with a spouse or a partner who is perceived to be more successful than them? So this is a third question, sir. As a sociologist, please.
Thank you once again for the very nice questions. Let me go chronologically. How does a parent deal with a slightly less successful child? I'm not a parent myself, so I wouldn't really give you a first-hand view on the matter, but my father or someone else say, I can't speak for others. I can speak for myself, my father, and I think my father didn't see himself as being more successful than me. He always wanted me to be a success. And if anybody has created a sense of ambition in me, then it was firstly my father and then Jane. My ambition, for what it's worth, was created really in the company of friends I'm at the moment meeting, and in the company of other friends in JNU. So I don't think there is a very clear disparity between a father and a son in this regard. Second question, how does one live in the shadow of a legend? This I can answer. One learns to live in the shadow of a successful, not a legend. I don't know anybody in my family who is a legend, but one learns to live in the shadow of a fairly successful parent, if he's successful, that is. And if there is a shadow. Now, of course, there is a shadow. He's not here. So I don't think that also is a very serious issue, because one outgrows that shadow and one learns to live on oneself. And that's the first. And the third question that you asked me, how does a husband cope with her wife's success? If a wife can cope with her husband's success, I'm not a husband, so I can't comment, really speaking, here as well. But if a wife can cope with her husband's success, then why can't the opposite also happen? Why can't a husband live in his wife's shadow? If he loves his wife, then I don't think the shadow really matters. And here, that applies to all the other two questions. If you love your parent or if you love your child, then the shadow just doesn't come. You don't worry about the father or the mother's success. Or your own success vis-a-vis your offsprings. You just love your relative, your parent or your children. So these questions will keep coming up, and my answer to that is the answer to all these interpersonal problems lies in love. If you love your father or if you love your mother, then that person's success just doesn't matter. And similarly, a husband, if he loves his wife, then where's the question of success coming in? That's the first question, and first three questions. And second one is, my question is, when you're faced with bullying in public, what can one immediately do not to get mentally impacted by it? I really don't have a good answer to that. I didn't know how to cope with bullying in school. I used to get very, very upset, and I used to end up beating up my friends. They would beat me up, and there would be a massive fight, and eventually I would be thrown out of the school bus. These things keep coming in. I didn't know how to mentally cope with bullying. But as I said, when I was in college or university, I just didn't get bullied. I just didn't get ragged. I didn't consider the fun and frolic of the place to be ragging or bullying. I enjoyed myself in college and university, so I didn't consider that to be bullying. So the question, how does one cope with it mentally? I suppose with fortitude. One learns to stay quiet. One doesn't get provoked. I unfortunately get very easily provoked. I continually get provoked by bullying, by ragging, and I end up returning the favor with the choicest of expletives. Unfortunately, I have to curb that streak. I should not use unclean words. So one does not get provoked. That's how one copes with bullying mentally, if that's an answer. I don't think I have any other answer to give. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, the bullying question you've already taken care of. The gender dimension you've already taken care of. There is another question which I would like to address to you, and this is by Dr. Lisa. How would you create an environment that is not too overwhelming for the children in the house to be affected by peer pressure in educational institutions, or when they are, young adults just started working, something like that? Since you are an educationist, maybe you can answer this question, sir.
Let me read it once more.
Yes.
How to create the environment not too overwhelming for the children in the house who are affected by peer pressure. I suppose by trying to understand the dynamics of the school, parents often fail to, not through any fault of theirs, to understand what's happening in school. There is the communication gap between the school and the home, which leads to, I think, an anomaly in the understanding of the difficulties that the child is facing in school. So, I suppose parents have the response. Here, the responsibilities of the parents coming. They have the responsibility of going and meeting the teachers repeatedly and asking them if there is anything wrong going on in school. They have to relate to their children. They have to continually monitor their children. Monitoring a child isn't being overbearing. One has to keep in touch with what a child is thinking. So they have to continually ask their children if there is something going wrong in school. And as a doctor once, a neurosurgeon once said about my father and us, tender, loving care matters. TLC, as he used to say. A tender, loving care at home, in a home surrounding, is what really matters. If the parents and the siblings, the stronger and even weaker siblings, give tender, loving care to the children, then there really isn't a problem in anything. So ultimately, the answer again is love, I suppose. One has to show as much love as possible to one's own children and parents, not just children. One has to show a lot of love to one's aging parents. That also is very, very important. My mother is 80. One has to constantly show love. Right.
Okay. So, yes, thank you very much. Thank you, sir. I think this is very, very well answered. Moving to Dr. Shankar. Dr. Shankar, I would again pose the same question to you, because you would also, be well placed to, maybe answer this. What is your advice about not creating or ensuring that there is an environment wherein children of the household do not feel overwhelmed by peer pressure, either at school or college or maybe at a workplace? Sir, you are on mute. If you'll just unmute yourself, please.
I have only one son, so I'm not the right person to answer this question. So I have no idea about peer pressure, but it happens because in my case, I have another brother. So I got selected, in my first attempt to the medical. So he was all for next 2 years until and unless he got selected in medical school. He was, treated not badly, I can say, but he was having pressure to get selected. So it happens, but not always the people who are with you, but parents, and especially बिहार में तो लोग अगर आपके माई फादर वाज डॉक्टर तो मेरे भाई बहन सब डॉक्टर हैं, सो सब पे प्रेशर है और एक ही जगह जाने का प्रेशर है, ये अलग टाइप का प्रेशर है. अगर आपका प्रेशर डिवाइड रहे कि कुछ भी बन जाओ तो शायद कुछ बन जाए, बट ये बहुत बड़ा प्रेशर है कि अगर फादर डॉक्टर है तो सबको डॉक्टर बनना है. सो ये मुझे लगता है कि अपार्ट फ्रॉम जो बाकी सब जगह पीयर प्रेशर और फैमिली प्रेशर होता है, हमारा स्टेट उसमें से कुछ और प्रेशर ऐड करता है अलग टाइप का जो शायद कहीं नहीं मिलता. सो इट्स चेंजिंग, अब चेंज कर रहा है, चीजें चेंज हो रही है अब, बट ठीक है, हम लोग के टाइम तक तो मतलब वी वर नॉट अलाउड, हमें मालूम भी नहीं था कि कौन से टाइप का करियर ऑप्शन होता है. घर में लोग इंजीनियर और डॉक्टर थे, तो मेरे फादर डॉक्टर थे, तो मैं इधर आया. मेरे चाचा इंजीनियर थे, तो उनके बेटे के पास इंजीनियर बनने का मौका था, बट मेरे चाचा को लगा कि यार इंजीनियर बिहार सरकार में बनने से अच्छा ये डॉक्टर बने. सो उस पे फिर प्रेशर आ गया, सो फिर वो डॉक्टर है.
Okay, fair enough. So, Archana ma'am, any interventions? Because normally we always have Archana ma'am with some interventions, with some, and she's able to weave some magic into the talk and bring in her own personal experiences. Because she has a wide array of experiences as an administrator, as a person who's had her struggles with mental health, and somebody who's been at JNU, and JNU is after all Oxford of the East, so come into contact with people from all kinds of ideologies, all kinds of all parts of the country. And I remember a joke which somebody from JNU shared with me, with all due respect to everybody from JNU. So this person said that I didn't understand a word of Hindi when I came to JNU, and she was from Madras, and people said, you are a Madrasi, you are a Madrasi, you're from Madras, you're a Madrasi. So I said, okay, fine. Then she said, my roommate was from Chapra, and she says I started calling her a Chaprasi, and then everybody started glaring at me. Somebody even thrashed me or threatened to thrash me. So ऐसा हो जाता है कभी-कभी. Language is funny. So yes, ma'am. Over to you, please.
Thanks, Parikshit. It is so difficult for you to say over to you now. Why don't you share your story a little?
मैम जब टीचिंग लाइन में होते हैं ना तो माइक छोड़ना थोड़ा सा मुश्किल हो जाता है.
हाँ, माइक टाइसन, तो अपना बताओ ना. You can happily answer these issues. Please talk about your parents. Both are IAS officers. Both have been very successful IAS officers. So basically, I think you would be able to answer this better. And you have also experienced a sense of, घर में you feel कि नहीं, छोटा baby was more pampered. तो तुम शेयर करो, ज्यादा relevant तो तुम्हारा story है.
Okay, so like Dr. Shankar mentioned that there is, in some families there is some tradition, and there is so in my family also something similar. Everybody used to be in the administrative service or in the armed forces or something like that, and if not these, then some of the other central service like railways and this and that. My maternal uncle was in the mechanical part of the railways. He retired as member mechanical of the railway board. My Nana used to be an IAS officer. My Mausi was an IAS officer. My parents were both IAS officers, as Archana ma'am has mentioned. And everybody else used to be in the armed forces. Somebody is a lieutenant general, somebody is a major general, somebody is a brigadier here, Air Force, this, that. And then, in this generation, not just me, even amongst my cousins, like a lot of people will feel more avenues are open, more kinds of careers are open, and there are other reasons which are there. So people, choose to do something else. And in every house, I think, they don't quite follow Article 14, which is, the law should acquire equally, and equal protection of law, and the law should apply equally. So that was the case in my house also. Simple example, as a 9-year-old, I was allowed, I was expected to take care of a 4.5-year-old younger brother and the entire house whenever my parents went for a party. And as a 16-year-old, my younger brother was considered too young to कि इसके भरोसे घर छोड़ के नहीं जा सकते. You have to be present. So if I wanted to go for a party and my parents had to go for a party, it was essential that I had to come back home by 9 o'clock. Right? So now कौन सी पार्टी 9 बजे खत्म होती है? Otherwise आप अपने स्कूटर की चाबी जमा कर दो. Right? So that is the biggest punishment, no? स्कूटर की चाबी जमा कर दो, फिर तो मतलब no public transport in small towns, it is only your own scooter. So one kind of grew up in this kind of a shadow, and हाँ थोड़ी सी दिक्कत होती है, but then with the help of So, I mean, a good support group with the help of the right medical interventions, I was able to tide over these problems. But yes, I must share that it is difficult because जैसे कहते हैं ना कि या तो आईएएस ऑफिसर बन जाओ या किडनैपर बन जाओ, ये उसी टाइप का था. वेस्टर्न यूपी में ऐसा ही होता है, राइट? या तो किडनैपर बन जाओ या वो बन जाओ. सो इन माय फादर्स विलेज फॉर एग्जांपल, एवरीबody is either in the government service in some or the other capacity, or is a don, or is a farmer, or is a postman, or is in the army, right? So these are the only options. And if you are not fitting into any of these, see, I could not go for the army because I have poor eyesight. I could not become a don because I don't have the physical acumen for being a don. Don बनने का qualification क्या? You have to just kill your boss. यहाँ पे तो ये सब काम, स्कूल में लड़ाई तक नहीं किया था. So that is not cut out for it. So law as a career option was never kind of looked at in my family, that law भी किया जा सकता है. So my parents were like, भाई तुम एक काम करो, इको ले लो फिर आईएएस का एग्जाम दे दो, या कॉमर्स ले लो फिर आईएएस का एग्जाम दे दो. सो बट आई वाज नेवर काइंड ऑफ इंटरेस्टेड बिकॉज ऑफ वेरियस रीजंस, एंड आई डोंट थिंक आई शुड से मच मोर बिकॉज अर्चना मैम इज प्रेजेंट हियर. आई एक्चुअली होल्ड अ वेरी डिफरेंट व्यू ऑफ द ब्यूरोक्रेसी. देयर आर एक्सेप्शंस लाइक अर्चना मैम, बट बाय एंड लार्ज आई डोंट हैव वेरी हेल्दी रिस्पेक्ट फॉर द ब्यूरोक्रेसी. एंड so I wanted to do something else, and even when I was doing BCom, because घर वालों ने जबरदस्ती BCom honors में admission कराया, we had only one paper for mercantile law, commercial law. So I got the highest marks in that. I got the Chancellor's silver medal for that, and I was very clear कि उसके बाद मुझे law ही करना है. So that is how I kind of came out of this whole thing. But yes, I can certainly vouch for the fact that living under people's shadow is difficult, and that's how I have full sympathies for somebody like a Stuart Binney or an Abhishek Bachchan or a Rohan Gavaskar. So that's about me. Ma'am, any expert comments, and please pardon my references to the bureaucracy. Are you there, Archana ma'am? Yeah.
Yes. I am secretly smoking, so that Abhishek doesn't see me. So, you see, I face the opposite. तो वो मैं शेयर करना चाहती हूँ because मैं बचपन से बहुत ब्राइट किड थी. मैं हमेशा टॉपर थी, तो मुझे पापा का ज्यादा लाभ मिलता था, और मेरे ब्रदर्स जो थे वो सब्जेक्टली पास होते थे. तो रिजल्ट आने के दिन क्या होता था कि मेरी खूब वाहवाही होती थी, और दोनों भाई जो थे उन दोनों को पूरा माँ का डांट मिलता था. बिकॉज प्रिंसिपल भी, स्पेशली जो मेरा बड़ा ब्रदर था, तो प्रिंसिपल भी बुलाती थी कि चले आइए, आपका बेटा जो है बहुत बदमाशी कर रहा है. तो मुझे उस समय फील नहीं हुआ, लेकिन बाद में ये फील हुआ कि, और ये उस समय का कल्चर था जहां पे लोग बहुत ब्लंट होते थे, जो मन में आता था बच्चों को बोल देते थे. जैसे मैं देखने में अच्छी नहीं थी तो कह देते थे कि अरे रीना तुम तो इतनी सुंदर हो, तुम्हारी माँ इतनी सुंदर थी, तुम्हारी बेटी तो इतनी बदशक्ल हो गई, लेकिन कोई बात नहीं, वो पढ़ने में अच्छी है तो उसका शादी वादी हो जाएगा. तो मेरे डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ प्रॉब्लम्स थे. लेकिन मेरे भाइयों के बारे में मुझे ये लगा कि मेरे बड़े भाई को हमेशा मेरी शैडो में रहना पड़ा. बिकॉज छोटा ज्यादा छोटा था तो उसको ज्यादा असर नहीं हुआ, लेकिन बड़े भाई को काफी मेरे शैडो में रहना पड़ा. और उसके चलते मुझे लगता है कि बचपन में वो बहुत अग्रेसिव हो गया. यहाँ तक हो गया कि 10th के बाद सेंट माइकल्स बिहार का एक बहुत ही फेमस स्कूल है, वहां पे कहा गया कि नहीं, इन लोगों ने कुछ शीशे वीशे फोड़ दिए थे स्कूल के, तो उनको बोला कि इनको हम नहीं लेंगे, जबकि उसके मार्क्स अच्छे थे. तो उसे कर्नल सत्संगी CSKM करके, उस समय जस्ट एक नया स्कूल स्टार्ट हुआ था, वहां पे मेरे ब्रदर को भेज दिया गया. और उसके बाद ही फ्लावर्ड, मतलब वहां पे वो टॉप करने लगा, इतना अच्छा करने लगा. उसका हंसराज में फिर हिस्ट्री ऑनर्स हो गया, फिर आज वो बहुत ही सक्सेसफुल लॉयर है पटना हाई कोर्ट में. तो मुझे ये लगता है कि डिस्क्रिमिनेशन जो है जो नहीं होना चाहिए, और पेरेंट्स को बिल्कुल इस बात का हमेशा ख्याल रखना चाहिए कि कुछ लोग लेट ब्लूमर्स होते हैं, और मैं इतना सक्सेसफुल होते हुए भी सुसाइड तो मैंने करने की कोशिश की, मेरे ब्रदर्स ने तो नहीं। तो कौन कब सक्सेसफुल हो जाएगा, सो कॉल्ड सक्सेसफुल, बिकॉज सक्सेस क्या होता है, जिस दिन आप अपने ग्रेव में जाते हो, जिस दिन आप मरते हो, उसी दिन आपको पता चलता है कि आपका लाइफ जो है सक्सेसफुल रहा कि नहीं। हो सकता है आप बहुत ही सक्सेसफुल रहे हो, जैसे रॉबिन विलियम्स को ही देख लो, पर उसने सुसाइड कमिट कर लिया। तो ये जो मेरा जो बचपन का जो एक्सपीरियंस है विथ माय ब्रदर्स, मुझे लगा कि जो एक्सटेंडेड फैमिली, मॉम का तो फिर भी पापा क्योंकि दूर रहते थे, गांव में रहते थे, तो मॉम ने हमें ऑलमोस्ट सिंगली पाला। तो मुझे ये लगता है कि रिलेटिव्स कुछ भी बोल के चले जाते थे तो उसका साइकोलॉजिकल इम्पैक्ट होता है। जैसे मेरे ब्रदर को बोलता था, अच्छा कोई बात नहीं है तो खेती कर लेगा, हम लोग के पास बहुत खेत है। तो इसके बावजूद भी उसने स्ट्रगल किया, और जब वो इस एनवायरनमेंट से हट गया, जब वो दिल्ली चला गया, तो एक प्रिंसिपल के एनकरेजमेंट से, बस कुछ काइंड वर्ड से वो इतना फ्लावर किया, वो बिल्कुल चेंज हो गया। तो आई थिंक पेरेंट्स जो कि ऐसे बच्चों से डील करते हैं जो बहुत ही सक्सेसफुल नहीं है या एकेडमिकली ब्राइट नहीं है, उनको कभी भी हीन दृष्टि से नहीं देखना चाहिए, बिकॉज यू नेवर नो व्हेन दे विल ब्लूम, बिकॉज देयर सो मेनी अपॉर्चुनिटीज। आईएएस बनना, डॉक्टर, लॉयर और इंजीनियर बनना ही लाइफ का दी एंड नहीं होना चाहिए। सो मेरा तो ये एक्सपीरियंस है विथ रिगार्ड टू living in the shadows of a more successful sibling, so which did not affect my brothers. And second जो मैं experience share करना चाहती हूँ कि living in the shadows of a more successful spouse, because I am an IAS officer and my husband is from the private sector. तो आप financially भले ही ज्यादा कमा लें, लेकिन आपको canvas और वो जो प्रेस्टीज है, वो जो एक आईएएस ऑफिसर का होता है, व्हाटएवर परीक्षित में से, वो तो आपको नहीं मिलता है। सो व्हाट इज अमेजिंग अबाउट माय हस्बैंड, बिकॉज मैंने बहुत सारे रिलेशनशिप्स को देखा है टूटते हुए, बिकॉज आपका वाइफ ज्यादा सो कॉल्ड सक्सेसफुल है। बिकॉज सक्सेस वैसे तो मैं मेजर नहीं करती हूँ इन टर्म्स ऑफ हाउ मच पावरफुल यू आर, लेकिन जो भी हो, दैट्स सोसाइटल, जो कन्वेंशनल सोसाइटी जो है सक्सेस को ऐसे ही मेजर करते हैं। तो मेरा जब हस्बैंड से शादी लग रहा था, तो उस समय ही वाज नॉट वर्किंग एंड आई वाज एन आईएएस ऑफिसर। ours is a love marriage। तो बहुतों ने हमें कहा कि तुम्हारा तो मैरिज 2 दिन नहीं टिकेगा, बिकॉज तुम आईएएस हो, वो तो अभी कुछ भी नहीं कर रहा, एंड ही वाज डूइंग हिज एमबीए एट दैट टाइम। तो बहुत लोगों ने डिसवेट किया, और परहैप्स आई डोंट इवन ब्लेम देम, बिकॉज कन्वेंशनली आप सोचो, शायद मेरी भी बेटी आज ऐसा करे तो मुझे भी 1 मिनट के लिए घबराहट होगा। लेकिन वही है कि जो उतना सक्सेसफुल नहीं होता है, उसके ऊपर ज्यादा इनकम्बेंट होता है टू टेक द सक्सेस ऑफ द स्पाउस, आइदर हस्बैंड और वाइफ। तो मेरा हस्बैंड के बारे में व्हाट इज अमेजिंग इज दैट ही मेंटली मुझसे ज्यादा स्ट्रांग है। ही इज लाइक द एंकर इन माय लाइफ। वो जो है बिल्कुल, उसको अगर मैं कुछ अचीव करती हूँ तो मैं तो उतना शो ऑफ नहीं करती हूँ, वो जाके पूरे दुनिया में बता देता है कि अर्चना ने ये किया, वो किया। Of course, he doesn't support proud depressive because उसको लगता है कि ये अर्चना की एक vulnerability है जो इसे नहीं बताना चाहिए था। Anyway, that is besides the point. So, जो भी एक spouse इस तरह के relationship में रहता है, तो पहले तो एक उसको strong होना पड़ता है, और दूसरा जो successful partner है, उसको भी हमेशा ये कहीं पे माइंड में रखना चाहिए कि यू शुड नॉट अलाउ द अदर पर्सन टू फील एनी लेस। वो बहुत जरूरी होता है, बिकॉज समटाइम्स वी बिकम वेरी वेरी केयरलेस अबाउट दीज थिंग्स। वी become जैसे कि how I allow my husband to feel very important is that he takes all my financial decisions. मुझे ये भी नहीं पता है कि मेरा जो बैंक है उसका पासवर्ड क्या है. So, घर में बेड कवर और ये वो सारे खरीदता है वही. He chooses कौन से फर्नीचर कैसे कहाँ प्लेस होगा, क्या खरीदेगा. So basically it is very essential because जो ये बहुत नेचुरल है कि अगर एक रिलेशनशिप है जहाँ कोई ज्यादा फेमस है कोई नहीं फेमस है तो उस स्पाउस को बहुत लोग भी कुछ बोलेंगे जैसे. बट सरप्राइजिंगली हमारे रिलेशनशिप में क्या है कि सब ये कहते हैं कि अर्चना इज सो लकी कि अमिताभ से शादी हो गया. कि ये नहीं कहते हैं कि अमिताभ इज सो लकी बिकॉज दैट्स द वे ही हैज डेल्ट विद माय सक्सेस. सो बहुत जरूरी है कि यू नो यू आर कूल. ये उसको जेंडर लेंस से ना देखें कि औरत है तो ज्यादा सक्सेसफुल या ज्यादा फेमस या ज्यादा पावरफुल नहीं हो सकती है. तो ये मे बी क्योंकि हम लोग दोनों JNU में पढ़े एंड व्हाटएवर इज सेड अबाउट JNU gives you a lot of you know liberal outlook, broad-minded outlook to life और बहुत सारे stereotypes को वो खत्म करता है. जैसे when I came to JNU हम तुलिका इन लोग सब लेडी श्री राम कॉलेज से आए थे which was very English and you know snobbish kind of South Delhi college. और वहां पे हिंदी लोग बोलते थे तो हमें शुरू में लगा कि ये हिंदी टाइप से कैसे इंटरेक्ट करें. लेकिन फिर वो JNU में वी रियलाइज कि जो हिंदी भाषी हैं जो हिंदी बोलते हैं जो इस टाइप के बैकग्राउंड से आए वो हमसे ज्यादा ब्रॉड माइंडेड है. अब मेरा बैचमेट ये अमरीश कुमार जो है ना ये यहाँ बैठ के सुन रहा है तो ऐसे अमरीश का आई रियलाइज कि सच अ ब्रिलियंट गाय. तो हमारा एक स्टीरियोटाइप था लेडी श्रीराम से कि अ बॉय हु कैन नॉट स्पीक इंग्लिश कैन नॉट बी ब्रिलियंट. यस इंग्लिश में अगर बहुत यू नो फ्लुएंट नहीं हो तो नहीं हो सकता है. तो ये सब जो स्टीरियोटाइप्स है उसको ब्रेक करता है. तो परहैप्स यू नो एजुकेशन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है जो चेंज करता है. एज आई ऑलवेज से कि एजुकेशन डज नॉट चेंज सोसाइटी, एजुकेशन चेंजेस पीपल and people change society. So you know हमेशा उस टाइप का एनवायरनमेंट एक एजुकेशनल एनवायरनमेंट जो लिबरल काइंड ऑफ एनवायरनमेंट है जो आपको मतलब रूढ़ीवादी नहीं बनाता इस टाइप के एनवायरनमेंट में अपने बच्चों को रखना चाहिए. बिकॉज मेरे और मेरे हस्बैंड के लिए वी आर लाइक एनी नॉर्मल कपल. हम लोग की फाइट्स और हम लोग की फ्रेंडशिप इज लाइक एनी अदर नॉर्मल कपल. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि यू नो माई पर्सनल लाइफ माई प्रोफेशनल लाइफ डिफाइंस माई पर्सनल रिलेशनशिप. जब मैं घर आती हूँ तो मेरी उतनी ही मजाक उड़ती है. इनफैक्ट मेरे ऊपर मेरी बेटी और मेरे हस्बैंड ज्यादा पोक फन करते हैं बिकॉज दे थिंक आई एम एब्सेंट माइंडेड, आई एम स्लाइटली यू नो मतलब कॉमन सेंस की कमी है, डम हूँ उस वे में, बहुत चीजें you know like that absent-minded professor and eccentric हूँ. तो I'm not very well versed in the ways of the world. So this is what I would like to say कि जब ऐसा relationship हो, so if you have had a liberal background, if you have had liberal education, तो it really helps. तो ये दोनों है. और जो अंतरा मेरी सिस्टर है, हाय अंतरा, इसने जो क्वेश्चन पूछा है ये बहुत पर्टिनेंट क्वेश्चन पूछा है कि कैसे बुलिंग से डील करें. यू नो बुलिंग बहुत तरह के होते हैं. इवन फॉर पीपल लाइक मी, मैंने भी बुलिंग सफर किया है. वो और बुलिंग किससे सफर किया है, यू नो मेरी जो डोमेस्टिक हेल्प फर्स्ट वाली थी, she was तो मैंने जैसे SDM बने हम, तो आई गॉट दिस गर्ल हु वाज वेरी यंग और उसने आते ही पूरा कब्जा कर लिया मेरे घर पे क्योंकि I was always in office, so she became the mistress of the house and उसने मेरी इतनी बॉडी शेमिंग की कि जब भी मैं कुछ बोलती थी मैडम आप तो बहुत मोटी हो गई हैं. उसके बाद मेरा सारा कॉन्फिडेंस खत्म हो जाता था. तो यू नो तो एक तो one has to realize कि what is the bully aiming at. I was also a big bully in school. मैं काफी बॉसी थी. मेरे तुलिका को पता है, अंजलि को पता है, मैं काफी बड़ी बुली थी. I used to bully people, but I was a obvious bully and bossy. बट ये सब जो होते हैं ना, जो आपको रिलेशनशिप में जिसको गैस लाइटिंग बोलते हैं, वो मैनिपुलेटिव बुलिंग होता है कि उसका एम होता है कि आप प्रोवोक हो जाओ, क्योंकि बुली को कभी ये पसंद नहीं आएगा कि आप उससे अफेक्ट नहीं हो रहे हो. सो बेस्ट इज नॉट टू गेट अफेक्टेड. जो विक्रम ने बोला कि बस अफेक्ट ही मत हो, उसको बोलने दो. मतलब हाथी चलते रहते, कुत्ते भौंकते रहते हैं, उस टाइप का एटीट्यूड होता है. क्योंकि अगर आप प्रोवोक हो गए तो बुली का फिर क्या होता है कि सक्सेसफुल हो जाता है जो उसका इंटेंशन है. सो बेस्ट थिंग अबाउट बुलिंग, हम बहुत लेट रियलाइज किए हाउ मच माई डोमेस्टिक हेल्थ हैड अफेक्टेड माई मेंटल हेल्थ, बिकॉज वो हमेशा मेरे किसी वीक पॉइंट को लेके कुछ बोल देती थी, या तो कुछ बोल देती थी कि आपके बारे में मैडम इसने ये किया, बिकॉज शी वांटेड दैट पावर ओवर मी. सो bullies want power over you. Don't give them that power, and then they will become like real chuas. ये मैंने बुलीज का देखा है. दूसरा है कि हाँ, ये मैं नहीं कह रही हूँ कि अगर कोई आपको गाली गलौज कर रहा है तो उसको रिटेलिएट नहीं करो, बिल्कुल करो. और बुलीज का ये भी है कि अगर उनको ये पता चल जाता है, अगर आप फेरोशियसली रिटॉर्ट कर देते हो शुरू में, तो फिर वो भीगी बिल्ली बन जाता है. बुलीज आर बेसिकली कावर्ड्स इनसाइड. तो बुलिंग जो है उसको डील करने के लिए यू हैव टू रियलाइज दैट जो बुलीज होते हैं वो कावर्ड्स होते हैं, और दूसरा उनका इंटेंशन नहीं होता है कि आपके ऊपर आपको कंट्रोल करें. तो जब वो देख लेते हैं कि इसको कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता है, तो सब बुलिंग उनका खत्म हो जाता है. तो दिस इज व्हाट परीक्षित, ओवर टू यू.
Thank you very much, ma'am. As always, very incisive and very to the point. And this is very interesting, actually, that a bully can come in any kind of form. It need not be somebody who is how to say
more powerful than you.
Yeah, higher up in socio-economic or whatever, or as a child, a 9th standard boy when you are an 8th standard boy or whatever. A bully can be anybody. So yes, today you're talking about a domestic help. Dr. Day spoke about bullies. We had one fellow in school, and he was in 8th standard. And you know what he did? There was क्या होता है बच्चों में, and this was a 9th standard boy. And बच्चों में यही सब हो जाता है, मतलब especially over a girl, झगड़ा हो जाता है, मार पिटाई हो जाता है, धक्का मुक्की हो जाता है. So something like that happened. I was a witness to it. It was a sports day, and that long jump का वो जो होता है, that setup was there. And वो लकड़ी का होता है, you have to jump over that. And what this fellow did, he was an 8th standard boy and the other fellow was a 9th standard boy. The 9th standard fellow was slightly taller, and you know what he did? The 9th standard fellow pushed the 8th standard fellow. The 8th standard fellow picked him up and ran with him on the long jump का race track, and उसको लेके कूद गया. And then जब वो he jumped and he pushed him down. So the 9th standard boy, he fell, his back and chin hit that lakdi ka thing, and he collapsed on the. He said, "Ah, meri kamar toot gayi," and it was very serious. And then later on, we told this fellow that that fellow could have died. I mean, so the bullies and for many years thereafter, even today, I don't know if that 9th standard boy has been able to forget the trauma. But I do remember that जो हमारा 3 साल का था, I was in 8th standard and this fellow was 1 year senior to us. जो हमारा 3 साल का interaction बचा था, उस 3 साल के interaction में that 9th standard boy used to always quiver whenever that 8th standard boy would come. So this is, I think, important that bullies can come in any shapes and sizes. So thank you very much, ma'am. If there are no more questions, I think we will adjourn for the day. And thank you very much for joining in, despite it being festive season. And it's always fun to have these conversations and spread the awareness about mental health and learn from each other and experiences. Last time we had Dr. Lisa sharing something very beautiful about her life. And today we have learned from Dr. Day and from Dr. Abhishek Shankar, and of course, as always, our founder member Archana Verma ma'am talks about her own experiences. So thank you very much, and we will soon meet again. And this is a monthly affair, so we look forward to a new speaker and a new topic next time round. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Parikshit. Thank you, Vikram.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye-bye.